Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome. We have wonderful workshop and great presenters today. I am going to read a prompt and again welcome everyone here. My name is Dr. Hasara Kellyan. I am the moderator for this session. Before I introduce our presenters, I have a few items to share with you. Please know that we're in Zoom meeting and that you have full access to your video and audio microphone capabilities. Please be mindful of the presenters and other attendees in this session and stay on mute or mute yourself when not actively asking a question or sharing when prompted by the presenters. Should you have questions or comments otherwise, please enter them into the chat box. As time allows, we will share your questions with the presenters and they may monitor as well. Additionally, you may use the chat feature to share thoughts with the presenters and or with each other. The session listing in the conference app details the session and includes any documents provided by the presenters. The app also includes a short survey at the end of the listing. We ask that you complete the survey at the end of the session as it is important feedback for planning purposes. Thank you for being with us and enjoy the session. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our presenters. Cindy Garcia, Associate Counselor at MiraCosta College, Christina Lundy, Student Success and Equity Program Manager, and Lucio Lea, Associate Counselor. Thank you for being here, and the Zoom is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Hass. Welcome, everyone. We're so grateful that you are joining us today to learn about queering MiraCosta, or work on queering MiraCosta College, developing an LGBTQIA+ linked learning academic success and equity program. Next slide, please. So in this session, our hope is for us to share with you the collaboration that MiraCosta College, Student Equity and the Counseling Department has worked to support our LGBT student population. We will go over MiraCosta College data and collection and findings, and then it will highlight how MiraCosta College has been supporting LGBT folks. Specifically, we will talk about the ups and downs as we create this learning community, and virtually and in person. And lastly, our hope is that what you take from our session, that you apply this to advocate to create similar equity programs at your campus to continue supporting our students. So now I'm gonna allow my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Lucio. I do want to note that this is our second time doing this session today. And in our first session, we had Fran Bautista, who utilizes they, she series pronouns. And Fran serves as our interim LGBTQIA+ equity student services specialist, but they are unable to join us for this session. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them. And then I am Christina Lundy. I use she, her series pronouns, and I am the program manager for student success and equity, as well as the campus liaison for LGBTQIA+ needs of the district.
Buenos dias, good morning, everyone. My name is Cindy Garcia, and I use she, her series pronouns, and I am an associate counselor and LGBTQIA ACE program co-coordinator.
And hi, my name is Lucio Lea. I use he, they, and el pronouns in Espanol. And similar as Cindy, I'm the academic counselor and also the co-coordinator of our LGBTQIA+ ACE program.
So to start, I want to kind of give an overview of how did we get here, right? Some of you might be aware of the localized data collection that MiraCosta implemented in 2019 from the presentation that I and one of our data analysts, Lisa Trescott, gave last year, but I do want to provide a little bit of a recap. Most of you are probably familiar that there's varying obstacles when it comes to SOGI data that's collected, right? And so MiraCosta developed a local tool which gave us more control to really kind of better understand our LGBTQIA+ population. Our local efforts allowed us to create the answer options that we thought were important to provide our students. And it gave us access to the data in a more timely manner. It worked so much better for our timelines, and we were able to then start gathering information from students term by term. And at the time, MiraCosta was working through how do we measure matriculation? And we started to revamp that survey to become what's now known as our pre-registration survey. Our intent was really to confirm information that we were getting from our students. And so with this development, we were able to add the pre-registration survey as a mandatory task for students on their to-do list before they would actually be able to register for classes each term. So in the fall of 2019, we added options to note gender identity, sexual orientation, and trans identity, which was amongst other things such as food and housing insecurity, confirmation of major, military affiliation, foster youth status, etc. You know, we really sat with ourselves and reflected on what questions we were asking and how do we get the information that's actually useful to us. And working with our Research and Institutional Effectiveness Office, we're constantly grappling with the questions we have on this particular survey. And so within our community, you know, we think about language updates. How do we effectively make changes? How long do we need to collect data before it's completely relevant to us and making certain changes, right? For instance, when the Gender Recognition Act went into effect, we thought about all the implications. We've reflected upon how to capture data that gives us information about non-binary students. And it also made us take a deeper look at our entire community and wonder if we were doing this for our employees as well. Next slide, please. In addition to that more formal localized data that we created with our research office, the functional area of LGBTQIA+ equity has also really began to create more programmatic offerings, such as trainings, newsletters, signature programs, etc. In January of 2022, our team implemented a post-event survey to gather feedback from participants on our programming, and I'm happy to say that that's shown a 100% positive response rate in regards to our participants' satisfaction with LGBTQIA+ events and workshops that are offered, the knowledge of the guest speakers that we might be bringing, and the opportunities for community building and space to learn about LGBTQIA+ issues. In addition to that, the Pride Inclusion Training was created in 2021, and it was created to ensure that every member of the MiraCosta College community had access to high-quality information to aid in the support of LGBTQIA+ students, faculty, and staff. The training itself really aims to increase awareness and understanding of LGBTQIA+ issues and to train those outside of this community to advocate for and with people within the LGBTQIA+ population. I do have to note that in October of 2021, after much demand, a student-specific version of the Pride Inclusion Training was created, with 41 students enrolled in the first month when we had an internal goal of getting 10 students enrolled. And we evaluate the effectiveness of the training by reviewing what's a pre and post assessment that we created. And one data point that we've pulled out is that 67.1% of participants, before they take the training, are not confident in being able to name an LGBTQIA+ resource that exists within the district. And after going through the Student Pride Inclusion Training, 98% of trainees are now confident in being able to name and talk about how to access the resource for LGBTQIA+ students that might exist within the district. Also, in 2020, the first year of the pandemic, the college also hosted the Basic Needs Survey, and the results of that survey clearly showed disproportionate impacts for LGBTQIA+ individuals, with marked indicators of these students experiencing large levels of housing insecurity, food insecurity, and lacking access to mental health support spaces. Slide, please. So LGBTQIA+ equity is a functional area of the Student Equity Department, and it works to ensure that there's inclusion and support for the LGBTQIA+ community here at MiraCosta by offerings such as cultural events, educational workshops, community building activities, etc. I think I noted some of the things that we did on the last slide, but some of highlights include the Pride Inclusion Training, which I talked about. The PRISM Collective is an initiative that is co-facilitated by the Student Equity Department and Health Services, and it serves as an affirming student-centered space for LGBTQIA students to share experiences and really kind of express their identities and build community with each other. And also we have annual events such as our Lavender Welcome and our Lavender Celebration. The top image on this slide features a class of celebrants with their grad regalia and our rainbow stoles. You might see some people you recognize in there, like Stephen Dina's in there. I know a lot of folks know Stephen. Our Trans Day of Remembrance brunch, the bottom image is our most recent TDOR brunch with Peak Milan, who served as our keynote, and Jordan Sanchez, who was our most recent interim student services specialist. And then finally, our Pride Days event series that are held in the spring semester. And these event series bring about awareness, appreciation, and action steps that the LGBTQIA+ community can be engaged within with our guest speakers, as well as with clubs and organizations and things of that nature. Please. Whew, I get to talk a lot in the first couple slides. Fran and I split those before. I do want to start this slide, however, with providing an image description, because I believe that the images on the screen are likely not captured well for accessibility purposes. So on the screen is a slide with a white background, colorful circular images on the right side with 6 program logos on the left-hand side. The top logo is an orange half circle with the word Puente under it. Below that is an image of the MiraCosta wave with the acronym RAFI, and it reads, Resources and Assistance for Former Foster Youth. Below that is a multicolored word that reads Emoja Community. Below that is a pink and blue turtle image with the words Mana MiraCosta. Below that is the acronym UPRISE, split into 2 colors, yellow and charcoal gray, with the words Undocumented People Rise in Solidarity and Empowerment. And finally, below that is a black rectangular box with white words. The top word presented in an arch format says transition, and below that the word reads program. So again, within the Department of Student Equity, which is the department that I oversee for the district, we also host learning community programs. That's what we're here to talk to you about today. We call those programs our Academic Success and Equity Programs, also known as ACE programs, pronounced ACE, but spelled A-S-E, I know. ACE programs are designed to really intentionally center communities that have been historically marginalized in traditional higher education settings. At MiraCosta, we've identified students who are Black and African American, Latinx and Chicanx, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, undocumented, documented, mixed status, former foster youth, and formerly incarcerated or justice and system impacted. And what we really do within these communities is we try to honor the intersectional identities and cross-cultural experiences of our students. And we try to do that by honoring them through culturally relevant mentorship, tailored resources, and culturally sustaining pedagogies that reflect our commitment as a department and as an institution to student academic achievement. And so we really believe that if we're providing academic and holistic support in a culturally tailored way, that our programs are not only going to increase retention and completion, they're also going to foster true inclusion. And so student equity has strong partnerships with our counseling department, and most, if not all, of our academic success and equity programs started from dedicated and passionate faculty counselors who saw needs and implemented strategies that were culturally tailored and relevant to many of our communities. While I explained our functional area of LGBTQIA+ equity a little bit earlier, one of the things that we did start to recognize was that a specific learning community and cohort-based connection was really lacking at the district. And this is where our partnership with counseling got a lot deeper. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Cindy, and she's going to talk a little bit more about our counseling connection.
So you've heard about the services that LGBTQIA equity does as a functional area, but we also offer LGBTQIA counseling services. Ideally, when a student's meeting with a counselor, they're receiving affirming, holistic services, but we may know that this may not always be the case. That's where we kind of come in, that's where we come in to provide those holistic, affirming services for students in a way where we recognize that their identity as a member of the LGBTQIA community is not their only identity, or it could be not even their most salient identity, right? So taking all of those things into consideration, we discuss with students their academic, career, personal goals. We provide resources to on and off campus academic and identity-based resources, but thinking about that with an intrusive counseling framework or with an intrusive counseling lens, asking students, how are they doing outside of school? Not just here are your classes, but how are you doing outside of your classes? How are you really doing? Really making sure that we're connecting with students outside of the classroom too. And in line with that, when we are connecting students with resources, we have that responsibility to make sure that we are connecting them to affirming safe spaces. We're not just saying, here's the phone number to health services, contact them when you get a chance, but really making that introduction, especially right now with being in a virtual space, that's really critical. And also providing LGBTQIA specific workshops, recognizing that students in the community may need individualized, centralized support, especially when tackling different subjects. For example, we developed a career workshop for LGBTQI folks. That workshop specifically focused on challenges and considerations that queer folks navigate through the career exploration process, through the career decision process. For example, if students are part of GSA, the Gender Sexuality Alliance org on campus, how do they include that in the resume if they're if they want to include that in the resume? What does that look like when listing that leadership experience? Also, when we're preparing for interviews, right, we think about the way we dress, the way we present ourselves, but that looks different for queer folks. So also taking those considerations in mind. So just making sure that all of the content, all of the resources, all of the information, all of our conversations really center around LGBTQIA folks. And Lucia will touch on the outreach strategies.
Thank you, Cindy. So as Cindy mentioned, our goal is to provide equity-minded and holistic support services to our students. These approaches also look in the way that we invite new and current students to our programs through outreach and in-reach services. We know that students can take a lot from their first interaction or connection when attempted to attend college. So, and the data shows that LGBTQIA+ students, particularly students of color, tend to leave their institutions due to not feeling welcomed, represented, and or supported. So our goal in our outreach and in-reach services is to create a safe and welcoming invitation for students to learn that we are here to support them to reach their academic and personal goals. When we think about outreach and in-reach services, we need to be mindful of the accessibility our approaches can provide to our students. What we're doing so far is connect students through social media, newsletter, and now we're moving towards meeting students where they are. So that is going to high schools, LGBT centers in the community, or any other places that we are finding that our LGBT students located around, I guess, close to MiraCosta are, so we can then go there and meet them where they are and share about our services. So far, we have learned a lot from our pros and cons as we develop this learning community. The pandemic really impacted, student enrollment and thus the participation of students in our services. One of them was our counseling class that we attempted to have last fall, but because of enrollment, we needed to cancel the class. And also we're noticing in workshops and also events. However, if students' enrollment is going up, so we have successfully restarted GSA thanks to the student initiative and myself, Cindy and Fran. We will be serving as the co-advisors for students in case they have questions or just need guidance to do events and things like that. So, and also we're also receiving interest from future students to participate in our program, as they complete this interest form that we have available on our ACE program website. So this website will give us the opportunity to be the first contact to our future students and create a welcoming invitation for them to embark in their academic journey. Something that has made our community, the essence that has supported our community is the word community. Unity has helped us to survive, cope, thrive, and create impactful changes in society. So our goal is to continue fostering that in our learning community. One of them is the counseling class, where we will be centralizing and adapting college and career success topics to empower students to reach their academic goals and personal goals, as we also take in consideration how being part of the community looks different for us in these specific topics. Our program will be open to LGBT students and also allies, because we want to include allies, as we need to be mindful of those who might be not comfortable sharing their identity, maybe they're questioning, or maybe just they are allies that would like to continue learning more on how to support our students and the journey in higher education. So next slide, we will be showing more flyers on how we're doing this outreach and inreach. So as Cindy mentioned, this is one of the events, workshops that we hosted that is called Out at Work, which the intention was to empower and help students how the intersectionality between your gender and then just navigating the world, how that can look different for many of us, including people within the LGBT community. So our goal was to how to present, as Cindy mentioned, like your gender expression, how that it can be impacted, how now that you're in the workforce, like what how to confront those, like when you're outed by colleagues, or you need to the necessity to come out at work. So those were the goals for us to connect the LGBT experience through this workshop. Anything that you want to add, Cindy?
No, I think you did a really great job touching on all of the subjects and nuances that queer folks navigate in the workspace. Awesome.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So this is our flyer that we have been using to outreach to our community. The goal is our goal with this program is to share the benefits and learning opportunities students who participate in our program can receive. So we have identified our goal for the program, which is for students to reach their academic goals. This can look like transferring, only getting an associate's degree, taking classes for a certificate, completing prerequisites, courses for nursing, for example. So the intention is to welcome all students with diverse goals, and for all of us to learn how to navigate higher education systems. So as you can see, these are some of the services that we will support or provide to our students for now. And I share for now, as we plan to continue learning and adapting based on what we see from our students' needs. So this open-minded approach will continue to fall into the practice of equity and holistic methods that will be adapted as we continue and see what our community needs. So to continue promoting this sense of community, we will follow a cohort-based model. We see how successful a cohort model is for student success, as we see this happening now in programs such as Puente, Emoja, and other ethnic identity-based support programs in multiple institutions. A little bit about myself. I am a former Puentista and EOPS student from Southwestern College, and these equity-minded programs really helped me to get a sense of belonging, to realize that I to be in this position of presenting in front of virtually to you all, and to also, I was seen by this amazing folks. And I can just imagine how my experience would be if CHED, that is the new LGBT learning community at Southwestern College, how my experience would be different if I was part of that program. So this is the goal that we want to implement with this, that as a cohort, students take this counseling class either fall and spring, and an additional class that can satisfy a general education requirements, such as English, maybe sociology, or a class that can land on Area D, for example, in the CSU GE requirements. This will allow multiple students to enroll and participate in the program in case that they took an English class already or a counseling class, but they can still be in a cohort in case that they're still missing an Area D class, for example, which can be sociology. And also something that our goal in this counseling class is to use different use the LGBT experience and apply those to those topics through social justice and feminist approaches. This is because LGBT folks have a different experience of navigating the world and higher education than non-LGBT folks. So it is important to emphasize how our community is forced to navigate these spaces in different ways. So Again, lastly, to conclude on this, our intention is to also partner with professors who openly disclosed being part of the community or being an ally that they share in our MiraCosta page to ensure that students take a class with professors that aim to support our students and for students to have a safe learning environment. Next slide.
Yes, and Lucio did a really good job at sharing our goals and what we're doing, covering our outreach strategies. And the flyer or the image you see on the screen right now is how we started promoting our LGBTQIA counseling services in the fall 2021. I will say we were working virtually, so we're also trying to connect with students in an online space, right? We were very intentional about the way we reached out to students. We wanted to include photos of ourselves as we promote our services. Both Lucio and I are new associate counselors at MiraCosta. So it's not just about getting to know students, but also the community getting to know who we are and how we're here to support them. In addition, so students can put a name to a face, especially when they're reaching out to us for appointments, rather than having students specifically call the counseling department, right, for appointments or disclosing their identity. They can email us directly. And I know at other campuses, counselors don't always have the ability to schedule their own appointments, but at MiraCosta we do. So if students contact us, hey, I'm looking to meet with you, that's something we can do. So just being very intentional about that outreach, especially as we're working on developing the program. And then as far as our Counseling 100 class, as Lucio shared, we are currently promoting that class. I won't go too much into detail because Lucio shared a little bit about it, but I will reiterate that this class is really focusing on the experiences, exploring those identities of the LGBTQIA community. How do folks navigate not only academic spaces, but the world outside of these spaces? For example, thinking about Paulo Freire's idea of reading the word, reading the world, right? So we can talk to students about time management. We can teach students about planners, the Pomodoro technique, Eisenhower's decision matrix, but what does that look like in real life? Or outside of school, I should say. Just keeping all of that in mind, that students aren't just navigating academic spaces, but they have a life outside of school. And really, coming into these classrooms with culturally relevant pedagogy to make sure that we connect students' experiential knowledge and treat it as an asset as we bridge the content material to their lived experiences, and vice versa. We connect their lived experiences to the content material. And you've heard about what LGBTQIA equity does as a functional area, our counseling services. So what does that collaboration look like? What are some of our goals? We're still working on our student learning outcomes, but in terms of goals, really what you see on the screen here are the overarching goals for this. The first one is to foster community, especially right now. We're now currently in a hybrid format where we're both virtual and in person. So really letting students know that we're here to support them. Visibility matters, representation matters, and just being there for students as they connect with one another. As Lucio shared, we just revived, or not we, because of the students' efforts, revived GSA. So very exciting to build community, cultivate student leadership. So very in line with that, letting students know that their experiential knowledge, their lived experiences is an asset. So how does that work as they navigate MiraCosta or other colleges, other academic spaces, and as they enter and transition into the workforce? And lastly, support students as they reach their finish line, whatever their finish line looks like, whether it's earning a certificate, transferring to a four-year university, entering the workforce, or pursuing graduate studies, really letting students know that we're here for them as they pursue those goals. And here we'll discuss some of the exactly what this collaboration looks like.
So Fran, our interim LGBTQIA+ specialist, did receive many student inquiries where they proactively kind of reaching out to LGBTQIA+ equity in search of community and a student club. So they utilized their role as the specialist within the department to reach out to staff, faculty, and other students who wanted to support and even be part of reviving our Gender and Sexuality Alliance. I do want to note that our Gender and Sexuality Alliance, or GSA, is MiraCosta's third oldest student club at MiraCosta, with origins that started in 1997 for the district. And so, students wanted to revive this from its dormant state due to the pandemic. And so with the support of many staff, faculty, administration, and having Cindy and Lucio as co-advisors, this collaboration has really paid off, and GSA has been able to successfully be registered and is currently active as of this spring semester.
Fran also does an excellent job at creating a monthly newsletter. They develop essentially this newsletter that goes out to students and other campus community members, really outlining and highlighting the happenings across campus. Within that newsletter, we do have a counselor's corner with Lucio and Cindy. In this section, we highlight academic tips, reminders, deadlines, spotlighting on and off campus resources to really just try to connect and outreach to students in this way as well.
And with our lavender celebration specifically, Fran also implemented a planning committee this year as it's MiraCosta's first in-person celebration. And we really wanted to ensure that this momentous event was built upon the collaborative efforts of LGBTQIA+ community members, such as Cindy in counseling. Lavender celebration is actually tomorrow, so I just want to put that plug there. And we do have the Zoom stream, so once I'm done sharing, I will pop that into the chat. If any of you are available and you'd like to see what's going on for our in-person event, we will be streaming it live. And then also our Out at MiraCosta list that Lucio referenced earlier, I did drop a link in the chat for that. But this is a campaign that heightens the visibility of LGBTQIA+ identified faculty, staff, and administrators. And it was created with the intention to promote LGBTQIA+ inclusion, as well as trying to foster a campus culture in which everyone felt valued, as well as establish a sense of community, and really to signal to students who are in the queer community that they have representation and that there's support within our faculty, staff, and administration.
And lastly, our counseling, how that collaboration is going to look there as well. And this is including the counseling class in the fall, but also including the counseling class in the spring. How can we continue supporting students who might be part of the class or maybe not? So this is where our collaboration will jump in the sense of students who are part of the counseling class can definitely, we will promote for them to attend and receive the services and attend to the events that the equity side will host, and vice versa. If the counseling and the ACE program is hosting events that can potentially be important for students, then inviting those folks who are not part of the class, but still to ensure that most of our students can receive all the services. Next slide. So we have been sharing with you our data, what has worked, what has not worked, what are we planning on doing. So what we wanted to do is also plant seeds and maybe for you to start implementing this into your institutions in case that this is still new or not happening yet. And something that we wanted to offer you is some advocacy factors to consider, and one of them is the outreach methods that you use or potentially might use when you start supporting your the LGBT population. So there are multiple factors that we need to consider when supporting our LGBT students, especially through the outreach methods on getting the word out. So we need to work towards identifying best accessible ways to support our students, such as technology, creating QR codes, going to the community, going to the high school, adult school, or places that you learn based on your research where your student population is located in the area. So you can also be, I guess, you can be outreaching to that population. Something that I wanted to mention is that not all students attend college right after high school. So we need to consider non-traditional students as well. This goes back to intersectionality. We cannot support LGBT members without considering their multiple identities. So these other outreach methods can look like partnerships, like if you have connections with LGBT centers, mental health facilities, or other programs that you can share your resources, but also obtain their resources so you can share with your students so we can start implementing the support on and off the classroom. Something that we want to emphasize is the research community needs. The best way to support a population is hearing from them, period. That's what we need to, that's where we learn the most. So we have research that shares important factors like the social determinants of educational success that tell us that the impacts or what will be the best way for us to support LGBT students, such as mental health services, financial support, food insecurity, mentorship, and guidance. And we're moving towards collecting and making a more inclusive application in the CCC Apply to now learn how many students are enrolled in a specific semester, so that we can later see how many students will benefit from services. However, we still need more studies within our community or institutions that provides the opportunity to our students to share their needs that will allow them to succeed. That can look like focus groups. This is something that the SDCCD district is applying to learn from the students from multiple institutions. What will be the best way for you to feel supported? What do you need to succeed at this campus? This can also look like paying folks to participate in research and learning from them. So, and if we tie this into the learning community, think about these questions. What other resources can be implemented into the project that you're doing to support LGBT students? Do we need more student sessions, or does your students need food on the classroom to start targeting that food insecurity? And what else does your institution have to do to increase the retention rates as you support students in your institution? Something that we advocate for you to be part of is join a task force. Task force is a great way to collect information on how to best support our students. Task forces are important to brainstorm and bring visibility in that group. It is important to also that visibility looks like having multiple people from different identities and intersectionality be part of that group, and also honoring student voices in those meetings. A way to bring this more into holistic support, having folks from different departments, student services, financial aid, administrators, so we can have a greater scope on how to best support and not miss certain things that we can potentially not see. Your advocacy can also look like, if you're part of committees, always bring up, hey, what are we doing for LGBT folks? You can be that voice that can start planting seeds on these folks that maybe they didn't think about. How can we also make this, I guess, available for queer students? So, and then we go to Cristina, who will touch more on the other bullet points.
Thank you, Lucio. Yeah, we talked a little bit at the start of the Pride Inclusion training, and I know that we didn't go in deep detail about that, but that is essentially a revamping of what's more commonly known as our safe space trainings. I know a lot of campuses still have those. And when we had our safe space training iterations that were created by Steve and Dina and a faculty member named Dara here at MiraCosta, we were fortunate to actually have our entire executive management, so that is our president superintendent, as well as our vice presidents, as well as every member of our board of trustees take that safe space training. And so when you can get the folks who are hierarchically, that's not how you say that word, but in power, right, to understand what's going on with this community, to understand the needs, whether they're identifying as allies or not, right, it's really important that we encourage that. And so with our Pride Inclusion training, this is not a one-off opportunity. This is a self-paced opportunity for individuals who have opted in to kind of learn at their own pace, to make connections, to ask questions, and to engage. And so we encourage folks to go through training such as that. We are also thinking about how do we revamp this as we come back to campus, right? How do we provide more opportunities for in-person engagement in addition to what's happening on our Pride Inclusion Canvas site? And so I would highly encourage you all to encourage people on your campus who say they want to be about this work, right, to go and figure out how they can learn these lessons. What education and knowledge can they build upon? What conversations can they have? And that leads us to this idea of calling in folks. So I'll pass that over to Cindy, and she can talk about our next point.
Yeah, so when it comes to calling in folks, depending on your comfort and your safety, starting that conversation, we hear the term or the phrase intent versus impact, where the intent might be well-meaning, but by using outdated terms or making certain assumptions or explicit homophobic, transphobic comments, we can call folks in and being intentional about calling out or challenging the idea, the thought, not necessarily the person, to really have that space to discuss why those thoughts exist, why those statements are being made. But I will say that when it comes to calling in folks, just being very mindful that it is draining. It can be both mentally, emotionally, and physically draining, especially when it comes to explicit transphobic, homophobic comments, but also when it comes to microaggressions. Things might seem, small, but they add up, and having to navigate those different conversations, it is a lot of emotional labor. So definitely keeping that in mind. And then last, asking questions, being curious. Why are we doing things the way we are on our campus? How can we improve them? What can we do to learn more about the community? Whether we're members of the LGBTQIA community ourselves, or if we're allies, there's always more to learn. For example, myself as a member of the community, I know that I don't know everything about everyone in the community. There's always something more to learn as time progresses, just keeping up with how we can better serve our students. And I will say this, that I know this, this work is emotionally tiring. It is emotionally draining from my experience, but also from the shared spaces that I was in yesterday, just hearing folks talk about how hitting roadblocks can be challenging, but also keeping in mind that this work is very powerful and it's life-changing for us, but also for our students as they navigate college. And with that, we do want to open up for discussions. You've learned a little bit about what we're doing. We also want to make sure that we're learning and growing together. So we also want to know what efforts are happening at your campus or what needs to happen. So feel free to put it in the chat, to raise your hand, so we can start this dialogue.
What if you stop sharing for a moment, Cindy, and then we can get back so we can have that discussion right now.
Yeah. Or if you're not able to share or don't feel comfortable unmuting yourself, putting it in the chat, we do open it up for discussions, as that was our concluding slide, or any comments, feedback is greatly appreciated.
Looks like Christy has her hand up.
I'm a counselor at DVC, and we're also starting like a community of pride learning community. And I love everything you shared. You all sound really far along in the process, and like you're doing great work. My question was for the classes. You mentioned, I think, English, and then your counseling 100. Are they linked, or are they always unlinked? Like it's not a cohort and students can just take either or both?
I can speak on that a little bit. So since we're still in the process of developing the program, we're actually starting off with just a counseling class this semester. We're also trying to be very intentional about the faculty that we collaborate with, rather than just having students take that, that class for units, just really making sure that we're also connecting with faculty on that side. Ideally in the future, we're still thinking if we want to have a cohort base for both classes, or just a counseling class and students can take English, or as Lucio mentioned, another general education, just to make sure that they're also progressing toward their educational goal.
And I think after this academic year, we'll have more data, what worked just having the counseling class, or maybe we can now start planning to start adding that English class or another class that will support students, right? So I guess for now, since we see how we need to be mindful of multiple things because of the LGBT community, how they learn, how we need to keep it open for allies as well. I guess this will give us a sense of, okay, this is what will make our learning community work best based on our student population and also needs.
I'd like to highlight some questions that were here in the chat. One was a question about the pronoun options that are offered in Canvas. So I did drop a link that shows the current choices within Canvas that our students can select. So if you go on that link, you can scroll down a little bit. However, in addition to those options, and there's a myriad of options on there, there is also a form that students can fill out if their pronouns are not listed. And so then that goes to myself as well as Fran, because we oversee the area, and our vice president. And then we are able to work with our online education to add those as options into Canvas. Another question or comment I saw was, Janelle has been a fan of our out list and ally list for a while. Are there any requirements for folks who want to be on the ally list, a screening process per se? I have to note that our out at MiraCosta list is actually not an ally list. Those are actually individuals who are part of the community. I do think at one point in time we had allies that were listed on that list, and we started to engage in this kind of inquiry that you're bringing up. How do we ensure that folks are not just self-identifying as allies, but have done the work and continue to do the work? And so we moved in the direction of just having folks who self-identified within being in the community. However, in the last session, we did have somebody ask a question or prompt a question. Are folks who are in the community also screened on how they can support individuals within the community? And so there is not a process at this moment in which we're screening individuals on, for lack of a better phrase, their queerness, right? However, we do encourage everyone, even if you are in the community, to go through our Pride Inclusion training and to continue to engage with Cindy, Lucio, Fran, and myself in the various kind of engagement opportunities that we have to learn about the community. And it's an ever-evolving nature, right?
There is another question on the chat by Sean. My campus has very few LGBTQIA plus supports right now. We're in rural area that can still be very unsafe for LGBTQ plus people. How can I start networking with faculty, especially when I don't want to out anyone? Can anyone talk about how initial efforts got going?
I'm looking to Lucio and Cindy. I can share a little bit about MiraCosta, but I also think Lucio and Cindy would have some really awesome ideas because they're newer to campus. Some of the things that I understand that happened at MiraCosta was that there were very passionate and out individuals on our campus who were championing some of these initiatives that needed to happen. I also think that we had some things that came down from the Board of Governors, right? My secondary position as a campus liaison for LGBTQIA+ needs mandated that there was somebody who was saying with like a megaphone that this is important. And so I do think that we had those folks. I think what I would say a great place to start is to get connected within your region and or the state. So there are several folks who I believe are on the line. I saw Hawk was on the line earlier. I think Aaron was on the line, etc. There are some folks who are doing this work all up and down the state, and we are happy to connect with you and to connect and talk about what's happening on our campuses. MiraCosta itself is in North San Diego County. So while San Diego is seen as rather liberal, North San Diego County is rather conservative. And so I was having some private conversations in the chat about how do we encourage visibility, right? Just as you're saying, like, there's not a lot of opportunity to feel safe. And so encouraging some of those connections, looking to your human resources department to see if there is any funding opportunities to support employee resource groups, and starting an employee resource group that might not totally be centered on LGBTQIA identity at its start, but just an opportunity for folks to get together who are passionate, and then having those conversations with folks to see where they are in their comfort levels. I think those are great places to start. Lucio, Cindy, do either of you have?
I can.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I will echo just getting connected with folks throughout the region, throughout the state. For example, as a graduate student in 2017, 2018, I got connected to CACHE, which is the California Council of Cultural Centers in Higher Ed. So granted, that does focus on different cultural centers. That's really where I was able to connect with folks, and specifically queer identifying folks who are also doing the work, attending conferences just like this. Sometimes we see the same people attending our trainings, things like that, but it's also connecting with folks outside of those spaces, just being intentional about sending a follow-up email, just really connecting with folks, not just in a way where, you're trying to get something out of them, but just really fostering those genuine relationships. That would be my suggestion to start out there, and connecting with any region groups or campus groups, definitely.
I do want to also note that Dr. Emily Mitchell is here. Hi, Emily. And she dropped a Google link in the chat. If you have an interest in getting connected with other colleagues who are doing this work, or who are passionate about this work, or who might be part of the community, I do highly encourage you all to put your names on that list. It's a short Google form, and I know that Emily and others will be able to reach out and get us all connected. Emily, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you for having me. I had to join a little bit late because I'm going all over to the various places. And of course, always a shout out to MiraCosta and all the amazing work that you all do. You really are a model in many of your practices. So thank you so much for showing up and doing the work and fighting the fight every day. We see you and we appreciate you. So as I mentioned in my welcome letter, I'm going to be transitioning out of sort of planning stages of the summit and looking more to starting a statewide organization to bring us all together across the state, right? So that we can stop reinventing the wheel in each of our regions, right? And building on best practices. And one way in which we really do that is we connect with our regional leads, which is what the forum is for. And then we'll start connecting as a statewide organization, right? And so we know how much amazing work is being done across the state. Let's pick it up. Let's drop it into our own systems. Let's not spend so much time having to do all the heavy lifting, right? And capitalize on the good work that's being done across the state. And also a secondary part of that is for those of us who do not have employee resource groups in our districts or in our regional areas, which I hope all of you do because it's really vital and important, then maybe we can create that for a statewide for us as well, right? So we can come together, we can share in community, we can turn to one another and say, hey, this stuff is going on my campus, or this thing happened and I could really use some support. And that way we can pull together our collective power, right? We are powerful. We have a lot to say. We work hard and we show up hard. And so let's do that for each other. So thank you so much for giving me a couple moments to talk. I appreciate you.
You also want to address, there's a question about the Pride Inclusion training and our framework, and I'm responding to that question. If you have an interest in that framework or talking to us a little bit further, that would be Fran and myself. You can email us at lgbtqia@miracosta.edu. Our framework is rather extensive, but I think we can dwindle something down to share for each of you who are interested. That email is monitored by both Fran and I. I can also copy down this chat to grab your email addresses. Please feel free. I'll also type my email in the chat if you want to reach out directly to me. If you have any questions. In our last session, we talked about budgets, right? People were like, how do you have successful budget samples and how are you getting things funded and things of that nature? And so if you have an interest, I know that Fran and myself are really open. Cindy and Lucio have been amazing. They just started in fall, y'all. And they're already here like rocking and rolling with this learning community. So I just wanted to make note of that. Are there any other questions, comments?
if there are no questions and comments, I just want to say thank you one more time, Lucio, Cindy, and Christina, for this amazing presentation. Thank you for the incredible work that you're doing. And you're truly a role model for all the colleges. And again, continue doing the amazing work that you're doing. And I just want to read the last prompt and just say that we appreciate the knowledge our presenters have shared and the time they have given to the summit today. As a reminder, session recordings will be posted in the app within 2 weeks after the conference, and the chat information will also be included. We ask that you complete the session survey listed at the bottom of the session in the conference app at this time. We have we have great things planned for you after this. We have drag bingo, we have some fun activities coming your way, and the link for all the sessions, and again, the link for all the sessions and activities can be found in the conference app. Again, thank you for attending. Thank you for our presenters. Thank you everyone for being here, for your comments, for your questions, and for making this session incredible and one of a kind with all our presenters and participants. Thank you everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.